Welcome to a special edition of the BioCentury This Week podcast. I'm Jeff Cranmer, Executive Editor at BioCentury, and we are coming to you from beautiful Singapore, where we are wrapping up the fourth BioCentury East-West Biopharma Summit. Joining me to deliver key takeaways from the event are Jing, VP and Head of Global Strategy for Sciwind Biosciences. She's a veteran of global VC life capital. Lisa Wee, the former COO of Hummingbird, which has been quite the source of discussion here at the conference this week. She just started in her new role as Assistant Chief Executive Biomedical Research Council at Singapore's A-STAR, also known as the Agency for Science, Technology, and Research. From the BioCentury side, we have my good friend and VP and Editor-in-Chief, Simone Fishburne, who, of course, is a fixture on the BioCentury This Week podcast, and Josh Berlin, BioCentury's head of BD, and the man who, along with his crack team back in the US, and some are here today, puts on BioCentury's 5 annual conferences, of which this is the first of the year. We'll be back in Asia in Shanghai in October, I believe. That's right, Josh?
October 27th at 29th, yeah.
All right, now, this is the second time we've hosted this event in Singapore with lots of help from our Singaporean friends. Those of you who are here in the audience can see on our sponsor panels who they are. It's quite a big group that's really helped make this conference a success. And this conference comes as we're seeing record cross-border deal flow as Western biopharmas look to Asia for innovative assets, as well as the rise of the so-called NewCo Model, which Jing will be able to tell us quite a little bit about. And so will Lisa, of course. They've both been quite close to this new trend. And indeed, we did see one launch this week, as I alluded to, with IP from Hummingbird and investments from 4 firms who had folks on the panels here at the conference, from Jato, Clavis Bio, of course, led by Kushi, Novo Holdings, and Singapore's EDBI. We've had 3 days of panel discussions and fireside chats from executives and investors from across Asia's arc of innovation, from Japan, as we just saw here on the stage with one of our new friends from Chugai. Josh is getting props on his very colorful socks.
We'll go right.
Yeah, we'll go. And, you know, from Japan and China through Australia and Southeast Asia and on to India, not to mention executives and investors from the US and Europe who've joined us. We've networked at the Singapore Stock Exchange and high atop the super trees of Singapore's lovely Gardens by the Bay. And with all that, I'm out of breath, and I want to give it over to Simone to give us some of her takeaways from this week.
Right. So I think that, what everybody really wants to know here, listening to the podcast, is what the themes were, what the most important things going on and what's top of mind. But I think what people also want to know is how to be successful as a panelist at BioCentury's conferences. And I have here on stage, and this is a surprise to me, I have to tell you, I have a duel of the socks going on. And I think what people don't know, and I think it's time for us to come clean as a company.
We should.
I think it's time for that, is that when you come to a BioCentury conference, I'm looking at all of you out there, we really take a lot of notice of the socks that you wear. And we kind of have a little internal prize for the best socks. And Jeff really got slammed the other day because he brought no sock game. Well, I see Jeff has got little, what are they, space?
It's Yetis. They're
Yeah.
Yetis. And I was a little shocked that Simone said I had
he didn't.
no sock game. I had a maroon pair of socks with a bunny rabbit skull and crossbones, but I was upstage by, who was it? It was Luke, right? Luke
Yeah.
Doches from Joya
And I saw
Ventures. And
Michelle had some great stuff. Anyway, we will, I think we may actually include this in our post-conference write-up, or maybe some pictures, but I'm just shocked to see my two colleagues vying on the sock level. I, of course, have gone for the shoe front.
Not fair communication for ladies.
Yeah, well, that's not actually true, because I've introduced a whole new level where we're going to be looking at shoes. So, and also women, ladies can wear the socks, right? So,
If you want to join a BioCentury panel, we do advise to show us your stocks in advance.
yeah.
Make the grade.
That may become a criteria.
And I do need to say the women have awesome shoes for those listening at home. So Singapore, but
So let's go back to some of the
Yeah.
other take home.
Okay.
There might be one or two people out there who still want to know it. Okay. So I just scribbled down a few things, and maybe we can talk about it between us. But, the vibe seems to be, first of all, we've still got really tough capital markets, and that is going to be the case for a long while. I mean, a long while, obviously, everybody's got their own thing, but it may, at least throughout this year, that's the case for a long while. And as a consequence, there's this huge emphasis that we felt here on meeting investors, and from investors on meeting innovators and people from Asia with these assets. So while the public capital markets in particular are so suppressed, and there is this sort of tend towards this feeling of M&A, at the same time, we just have this rush of investors coming to Asia. Josh, you might talk about this in a minute, like, how many we've got, or the kind of appetite we had to come here. We're seeing that spill into our other conferences, and we're seeing innovators asking us, where can we meet the investors? How can we do that? And so there's certainly been a lot of buzz outside with the one-on-one meetings. I've also had bankers saying, I need to meet investors. I mean, this is investors' golden time. Maybe every day is investors' golden time. So I just want to talk about two or three other top-line things, and maybe we can cascade them through. Oh, you've mentioned the NewCo model, and one of the questions that came up in an opening session with some spicy answers that we might get into, right, was whether this NewCo model is here to stay or transient. There were also spicy conversations around whether you build an ecosystem or whether it has to sort of naturally evolve.
yeah, I thought Dave almost had to separate Dima and Andre from Flagship there. That got a little heated.
Yeah, but Dave didn't bring the socks, so what are you going to do? So the other thing I want to say, just two more things. One of my highlights, I've had many highlights actually, but one of them was a fireside chat with Jamie Rubin. She's actually at Guggenheim Securities now, and her response to a question from the audience regarding the outlook was, she sort of said the culling's hardly even begun. So I think there's sort of this feeling she kind of feels that there's a long way to go in terms of still, companies going under. And then we just had another great panel from Dave Flores, our CEO, on what we're calling Trump 2.0 on, is innovation at risk? Maybe not innovation, but the consequence of innovation at risk. And that seems to be actually also an overhang in all of the conversations at the tables throughout. So Josh, I want to just go to you right now, because there were a couple of other things that emerged that were really new for me. And that is the rise of innovation in Japan, and Japan as a part of the Asia landscape. We've actually just had a very nice presentation from Chugai, but even beyond that at the innovator level, and then India as well. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think that's right, Simone. This is a session that we had earlier today where McKinsey, our insights partner, issued its conference report. That's a tradition at BioCentury events, and for the first time this year, McKinsey took a deeper dive on what's happening in Japan and India. And maybe I'll start with India first. We also had a panel, I guess it was yesterday, run by BJ Carwell of CBC Group, talking about is now the biotech moment finally for India. So a lot of discussion about that. And I thought in the McKinsey report, which, if you didn't attend the event, you'll also be able to download that report from our website. But there was one slide in the McKinsey report that I really sort of chuckled at. which is there was a slide that said 3 potential pathways for India. One was the status quo, one was an emerging innovation player, and one was becoming an established innovation leader. And the reason why I chuckled by it, I was in the audience and I was sitting next to Frank Ledoux, who's been our longtime partner on our China events. And, Frank and the McKinsey team have been our insights partner. It'll be now for our 12th year when we're in Shanghai in October. But at the first BioCentury China Summit, they issued a report that was 2014. And there was a very similar slide there about China, talking about 3 pathways, 3 potential bridges to innovation.
You're not actually suggesting that McKinsey just take the slides out and then change the letters?
Well, it could be quite similar, but it was sort of, I think a lot of folks kind of forget that, say 12 years ago when we launched the China Summit, there was a lot of questions as to whether China could build a biotech industry that was innovative and that was globally recognized. And so to see, I hope us had a flashback.
What do you think the parallels are? Because, India's got more of a, I think it's thought of often in terms of a generic industry that I don't know that China had the same kind of history in that way.
Right. Well, China, maybe not as the pharmacy of the world, as they like to say about India, but, the China market in 2012, I'm seeing a few here, like at Carl Firth, who's in the audience, just joined Panacea Venture. But, I think, Carl, when we did that first China Summit, you might have still been at AstraZeneca, but it was really a market that was dominated by generics and essentially branded generics because nobody trusted the safety of the local manufacturers. And really, in 12 years, roughly, it's gone from that to, now we have companies like Sciwind doing NewCo deals. And it's been an amazing transformation. So whether that'll happen for India, I don't have a crystal ball, maybe more than anyone else.
Well, one thing I saw on one of the panels, I think it was the India panel that you mentioned, was Srihas, the CEO of Biocon Biologics, and he basically said, if in Bangalore we have 3 times as many like software wizards than Silicon Valley, we better be able to come up with AI drug discovery in India. And so I think that's definitely a space to watch.
That actually resonates with some of the other things that have come up because, that is true. And India certainly is a powerhouse for tech. And so one of the other threads that's come up is how different is our sector from others? Because it should be the case that if you are a leader and can be a leader in innovation in various other areas, why not be able to convert that in biotech? And so that's another sort of thread that has come up a few times in terms of, are we really so different from the other sector?
Yeah, I'd like to turn to, do you want to jump in?
No, I was just going to say that what Simone just said about are we that different from other sectors, that actually came up in the build. Are you able to build or let an ecosystem evolve? And there were some examples taken from other industries and as to whether or not there was a local champion supported by the government that actually led to the ecosystem being able to blossom earlier than it would have if it had evolved. So I thought those were all very interesting points. And is our sector that much differentiated that it's not possible in our sector? So I think the jury's
Well, that's a good point because the way that conversation or fight, whichever way you want to call it,
Get a little testy.
But the two sides of that conversation was, on the one hand, it's like it wasn't manufacture. What was the word? It wasn't manufacture.
Construct. Was it
construct?
Yeah, it was.
An ecosystem. And then they looked at various other sectors or verticals where that had happened. And the countermand to that was biotechs, so for example, EVs in China or something like that. And the counter to that was that the life cycle in biotech is just so much longer that it's not really relevant. You can only let it evolve. I think you want to...
Yeah, I think like being in China for the past 10 years, I think there are several important factors to support the quick growth of the ecosystem. We have talents coming from US, coming from Europe with very strong experience from Big Pharma. We also have a lot of money flowing to China, try to support the ecosystem and support the industry. And for especially in 2018 and 2020, we have a very good public market in Hong Kong as well as China, Asia. As we forming a very good like feedback loop to support the industry. It means like investor and entrepreneur, they can make money from the public market. And the last important factor actually is the infrastructure, which WuXi has started to build in China, making the overall the R&D efficiency to be really competitive compared to other ecosystems. These are the four factors has been supporting the Chinese biotech ecosystem growing so fast. And when we started looking at different countries, different market, I actually feel like India is kind of ready to take their next wave, catching up with China's speed, because they have all these factors ready for the past few years.
You're going to be the most popular person on the internet right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get ready for your LinkedIn to blow up.
Yeah, I was actually surprised to see like this sharing today by McKinsey to see that India has evolved so quick. They have like 1,000 biotech already in the ecosystem. It's a very significant volume we can see in overall across Asia. So I think we will hear more news from India as well.
Yeah. So Lisa, I'm curious, you're stepping into a very important role now at A-Star as this new assistant Chief Executive Biomedical Research Council role, and you know, obviously you've been in Singapore. You're from Singapore, right? So from where you sit, what's the status, the vibe of Singapore's biotech ecosystem right now from where you sit?
Yeah, I think it's exciting times. I mean, just this week, as you had mentioned earlier, Hummingbird Bioscience with its Singapore headquartered company announced exciting NewCo spin-out that was Calio, therapeutics name also after a type of hummingbird, Calliope hummingbird.
I did not pick up on that.
That was the genesis of that name. Nice. In addition to that, actually, I was really quite struck by two guys' presentation just now, because I think Singapore very much has been thought of as an ecosystem, not just of smaller biotech, but also large pharma. And I think Chugai's ability to have built a 160-man team in Singapore and the ability to really be a technology-first company, but searching for new targets, new biology areas, building on a local ecosystem where we have deep science, and working with A-Star for the dengue antibody that they had mentioned, for example. I think it's a great example of how the ecosystem pulls together both the large and the small. And one of the key takeaways actually for me from this entire conference is how fractured geopolitically the world is. I mean, not to belabor the point, I think everyone is aware of that. But increasingly, Singapore is a beacon of stability in this space. And I think we would very much like to be a convener of capital, of ideas, of entrepreneurial talent, to be able to come to Singapore, to be able to bridge capital with efficiencies in the Asian ecosystem. The ability to take an asset, an interesting target, to be able to move it quickly into preclinical development in our region, the ability to move forward the clinical trials in our region, and then the ability to bridge that to global markets with the key regulators. So I think that's very much the excitement that's here in Singapore.
I think today, island of stability is probably a big sell right now.
It's been very refreshing, I've got to say. You know, I've felt calmer and more relaxed than I've felt in a few weeks.
More stable.
And it just feels it feels so orderly that last night Josh and I went literally across.
Do we want to know?
You do.
You're going to get me in trouble
because
here.
it goes back to the bird theme. There's a great bar called Plume, and it's in the hotel across the street, and each page has a drink that's named after a different bird. And because we were sort of lulled into this safety and security and just general good vibes of Singapore, Josh and I decided to jaywalk, and Josh nearly got killed.
Arrested?
No, but Josh nearly got killed by like a
I almost
small...
didn't make the podcast.
So we're going to cut that anyway.
No, we should. But we should get back to Japan, and I know...
Okay, because I want to talk about cedar, but keep up the line.
Yeah, let's hop back to Japan because you brought it up earlier, and I know, Jing, you have some points you that were resonating with you from our conversation in the hall earlier.
Yes, so it's also like from the McKinsey report regarding sharing of how Japanese farmers going global.
Did Frank slip you $100 before you got on stage? Or?
Yeah, I should collect from him. So because that's actually like the major theme for Asian biotech, we all have a dream for going global because we have a strong belief that healthcare has no boundaries. And looking at how Japanese biopharma has eventually evolved to be a global pharma, as Japan revenue contributing to over 80%, it's really impressive what they have gone through and they have done. So it has mapped out like 4 strategies they have been using in order to reach the market step by step. First, starting with our licensing, that's probably most of the biotech. We are leveraging the opportunities over there to go global right now. And the second is a strategic partnership. And I actually thinking like the rationale why we do the NewCo deal is part of the strategic partnership. We want to leverage the capabilities a partner has and to conduct the clinical trials in the major market, US, Europe, and also eventually moving the asset to the commercial stage. So that's actually resonates with the strategy Japanese pharma they have. And then once they reach into a certain step, they will adopt the directly go-to-market strategy. And there's a lot of, I would say, lessons learned for Chinese pharma, Chinese biotech before. Even for us, we have set up our team in US like 4 years back. We have a 10-person over there in charge of the clinical development. But the bandwidth is limited. And we also have a lot of room to improve what kind of team we should hire and how we could collaborate between US and China. So I think for Japanese pharma, what they have gone through, they have done in the right way, looking at the percentage of management like they have.
So I wanted actually to ask you something. You know, one of the other highlights for me was a fireside chat that I moderated with Peter Alsagov from Temasek. And he had some very, very thoughtful answers. And a lot of it in regarding Singapore was around the importance of building an infrastructure and what that sort of is going to enable the kind of innovation ecosystem that you're talking about. And I'm wondering if you can look at what's gone on in China and sort of point to the steps that India and Singapore and Japan might need to take. Are there lessons from China other than work incredibly hard all the time, which is another theme that has come up, by the way, that you could point to? Or do you think I think we're going back to the evolve thing, right? Or do you think each ecosystem needs to figure it out by themselves?
Well, while I was in life, we actually cover APAC region. We have exploration in different countries. We can see that different ecosystem, they have their pros and cons. And I can start from China. I would say like China, for all the R&D activities, there's still a very strong culture difference between Chinese culture and US culture. So there's need to have more communications. We're eager to break the boundaries, but there are all kinds of micro factors stopping us to do that.
In the US?
Yes, in the US. And I would say like, because we can see a lot of Chinese biotech, they try to build a team over there, and there's a lot of wrong hires in the very beginning. So they have to do multiple rounds of attempts in order to get the right place. And for, I think for other ecosystem, Japan is very good for innovations. We can see a lot of great technologies, great science over there. But overall, I think the translation and the speed is not there compared to other ecosystem. And for Korea, there's also like a different scheme. I think Korean government has providing lots of support. And they are also catching up speed compared to Chinese biotech. They are very aggressive in terms of VD, and that's the thing like Chinese biotech should learn from them. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one of the thoughts I had on Japan was we had Remiges Ventures on a panel, Api from Remiges Ventures on a panel this week, and he was talking about this new program from AMED in Japan, which is essentially matching 2 for 1 on 3 for 1, excuse me, 3 for 1 on investments from accredited VCs. So, you know, the Japan government is, I think, doing a lot of more creative thinking, perhaps, about how to attract sophisticated investors.
I think you need to expand a bit on the 3 for 1 deal.
Yes, so and it's
not like McDonald's.
It's not quite like McDonald's. Maybe it's McDonald's for VCs. But the other part
join their marketing group, Jess.
Yeah,
I mean, sorry.
We should. The other part that was interesting is it's not only for Japanese VCs. So it could be for a Western VC that sets up a Japanese office. And so there's been a couple of Western VCs that have actually been qualified by AMED as well. And so, I think they're spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to bring more sophisticated investors into the Japan ecosystem to both help finance, but just as importantly, to help bring that knowledge of company building and globalization to the Japanese industry. And that's something we're hearing a lot now, is a lot of our Western VC friends much more interested now in Japan than perhaps a few years ago. Always been a recognition of the innovation and the academia, but the company formation part, I think, is something that folks are a little more excited about.
Yeah, and the management team. So I've talked to a lot of VCs lately for a forthcoming story.
When will that be coming out, Jeff?
Well,
Tell
let's see.
us.
I promised it in August. We didn't discuss which year.
Yeah. That's good.
So, but I like procrastination. I procrastinated on my last NewCo model, and then as I was flying over Japan,
So
people reached out to me from JTO, and I got a lead, and I got a little intro for my panel. $187 million going into this ADC out of Hummingbird.
You're waiting for the announcement of the next 300-year-old
No.
Pharma.
I met a very interesting CEO from Japan who I'm going to speak with next week, and she is the inspiration behind me getting the story done 4 months early, or as some people say, 9 months late. But what we are seeing, the people that I've talked to, in all seriousness, they say there's a lot of innovation in Japan. There's increasingly a startup mindset, much more so at least than a decade ago. Carl's kind of like, not so sure. But no,
let me follow up on that, because I'm not going to pick on an audience member, but we will have,
like me, I will.
Yeah. But we will have people running along listening to this podcast. I'm speaking to you, Danny Bass. Okay. We know that people do that, and they'll be thinking, really, why should I think that it's different now in Japan? I've heard this story before, and so I'm trying to get at why would they think now? Oh, maybe I ought to be listening about.
Yeah,
Japan.
I mean, well, we've seen, and the name of the company escapes me. Like one of the largest venture rounds, like $30 million Series B, which for Japan is a lot. I mean, Aki from Remage is on our panel. When he was talking about significant money to launch one of their new companies out of their incubator into the wild, he was talking about $10 million. So $30 million is quite a lot for an early stage venture round in Japan. Additionally, we're seeing just a lot of Western VCs scouring for innovation in Japan, and they're looking to marry Japanese innovation, Japanese R&D expertise with management teams from the West. So I think we're about to start seeing more companies like that. Lisa?
Yeah, actually, I mean, if you look at the entire ADC space, I think the one ADC that really changed that space was Enhertu, and that came from Daiichi Sankyo. So I think the ability for the Japanese innovation teams to be able to engineer chemistry and engineer those linkers.
Did the first PD-1 come from Japan as well?
That's
true.
So many of the first, I mean, I think there's no question that Japan had got that. And as I said, I'm sort of trying to channel our audience who's listening to this. I don't think anybody questions that Japan has the innovation and the science there. And as you point out, Daiichi and various other ones, Eisai and Biogen,
sure.
So we've got some very established ones. I think it is interesting. I wonder if there's, a cost arbitrage. Is Japan the new China? People think that they can get cutting edge innovation now as maybe China. I think so that is, by the way, another thread. Is it still cheaper to get innovation in China? And I think we're sort of starting to see that that price is going up, right? It's not as cheap.
Yeah, any thoughts? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think like as a biotech from China, we definitely wish the price should go up to give us a fair price. And I think like for whether Japan is going to threat China, I think the innovation is very valuable no matter where it comes from. we are excited to see like the pharma partners, they have shown their strong interest in Asia. No matter where the innovation come from, we welcome like competitors as well as the friends. Even for us, because we're kind of like trying to establish the platform in metabolic disease, not only leveraging our in-house technology platform, we are also like leveraging external different type of modalities technology platform and take them in-house to strengthen the pipeline over there.
Yeah, I mean, the other country we're seeing a lot of, I think, investor interest now is Korea. We've had a very large delegation from Korea Biotech out here in Singapore this week. We had I thought, a great CEO roundtable this afternoon that included SJ of Forum Therapeutics, which, literally IPO'd on Valentine's Day, largest biotech IPO in Korea.
And that was cool. He said when they rang the bell, they invited everyone in the company could invite their partner to the event. So it's we'll have to see what Korean biotech can top that when they go public. But that was one of the best IPOs from a Korean biotech in some time.
Yeah, we've been watching that innovation landscape. I think we went out for a trip, like 7 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that. And, met some of these companies. We met all of them, actually, but so it was taking a while, but I think I really...
I would like to start tucking into the NewCo bit a little bit. And you were talking about like, China biotechs wanting to get, fair value for their assets. And my colleague, Stephen Hansen, helped me a little bit with my story, which came out this week. He was speaking to the Verdiva CEO, and that's the company that Sciwind did the deal with, and he was saying the assets are no longer cheap, and that's quite a launch. I mean, obviously in the hot obesity space, it's from a part of the world that is very close to Simone's heart, the UK, and I believe it was one of the largest venture round ever for a UK biotech at like 400 million.
Right. I think what we've seen. We actually call this thing the snake, and we've, published on the 13 now, in fact, 14 companies that fit this profile of what we call the NewCo spin-out model from Asia. And Verdiva is in the UK. There was one that is in Switzerland. The others are all in the US. And Verdiva is one of two that are in obesity.
Yep.
And so, I think the idea... We had this conversation at the table, are people paying too much? I mean, if this molecule works in obesity, $400 million is...
Well, that's the venture.
Jing.
We have Jing here to set us straight.
So Jing, tell us about the deal.
Yeah, so for us, I think the rationale for us to do the NewCo deal with Verdiva is because we think we have very good quality assets and want to maintain the competitive edge of the asset. So we need a world-class team to support us.
Right.
We need sufficient funding to do that. And for that part, we cannot do it alone. That's why when we meet with Kurum and the Verdiva team, we think they are the right partner. We have the common interest. We have the right purpose to form the NewCo with them and let them to take our asset for the global market.
So that's what I wanted to say is, $400 million. Was it 400?
Is it a 411 million raise for Verdiva?
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
And then 70 million up front,
yes.
2.4 billion in biobucks.
Yes, that's right.
Right. Well,
but no equity component.
If it works in obesity, it's cheap at the price.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously, there's a long way between that and a lot of money that's got to go into the trials. But that is how people are looking at the obesity space. And I think when you say the price is going up, I think it's going to depend on all of the assets that we've looked at are innovative assets in cutting edge technology in really important indications. So in this case, it's in obesity. There were other ones that are bispecifics in autoimmunity. That's also very hot. So those are going to command money, command big tickets. And I wanted to say one more thing. The other thing is what you talked about, the experience management team. So, this is a team that had done it before, right?
Yes, Kurum has extensive experience in several farmers, and he has been a very senior level management team.
His second NewCo deal.
Yeah, it's actually second NewCo deal. I think when we were selecting partners, we value like whether the partners have the capabilities on the clinical development in US and Europe. And the other very important component is whether they have very strong business development capability, what we don't have right now. So that's that capability we want to leverage, because eventually we want the asset to be successfully developed and also successfully commercialized. That's very important for the fundamental of the collaboration.
So Jing, I could maybe ask you a question, because this is a question I get a lot. Is so the NewCo model is also helping to finance China biotechs, right? So what are you doing with the money? How much of it is going to be spent on your remaining pipeline? How much of it is going to be returned to investors that you might already have in the company? It's a lot of sort of speculation as to what the China biotechs are going to do with the money.
Yeah, so we really appreciate our shareholders always been the strong supporters. So we're going to remain out of money and continue to support our other pipeline, because we have a quite strong preclinical pipeline and try to address the unmet needs in obesity. And stay tuned.
So we're fortunate to have two women executives here who both were just at companies doing these NewCo deals. And so, Lisa, you were at Hummingbird, and that was really a big conversation this week. It's a little bit different than a lot of the other NewCos that we've seen launch so far. Investors in Hummingbird, some of them at least, are going with the new company, Calio. Some of the people, Piers, who is CEO of Hummingbird, is CEO of the new company. I'm sure you can't say everything, but what can you tell us about?
You can tell us. You don't tell anyone.
Yeah, we won't tell a soul.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, what's your question?
Just us. Well, tell us from your perspective about the deal and what you think.
Yeah, I mean, so Hummingbird started as an antibody company, and I think what's been really great was the ability to partner in the ADC space. So actually, I think about 2 years ago, we did a deal, or Hummingbird did a deal. I need to practice my pronouns here. Hummingbird did a deal with...
we're not allowed those on America anymore.
with Endeavor for a HER3 ADC. And then after that, I think that started thinking about how best to extend the duration of response to a single payload ADC. And that was the first, or this dual payload ADC approach, particularly around a synergy of payloads. So I think that was a very natural evolution of that. And I think what's great about Calio Therapeutics is now there's sufficient capital. I think one takeaway from this conference is you have to be fast. And I think the ability to get enough capital to do the asset and the platform justice, to be able to get it into the clinic as soon as possible, was really what underscored the deal and what makes us really excited that this is going forward. Maybe just to add a little bit about this idea of a NewCo and spinning out of assets, I think we can also take it into the new role that I'm entering at the Agency for Science, Technology, and Research, which really is an entity that plays between the public and the private sector, and the ability to think about how something as interesting a construct as A-Star could really build value in terms of public resources to be able to sustain innovation in building multiple new platform technologies that could be potentially spun out into assets in the future.
It's great getting your take from both of you, and really appreciate you joining us on the podcast. We'd love to have you back anytime. And I just want to throw it over to Josh, who's looking ahead to some of our future conferences that are coming up later this year.
So we'd love to have everybody, both here in the audience as well listening to the podcast, join BioCentury at our other events coming up this year. So next up is our 25th anniversary of BioEquity Europe. We'll be in Bruges, Belgium in May. The theme of that is about the complexity of the moment, and we're going to have a lot of discussion there about sourcing of innovation from Asia and what that means for European VCs, European biotechs. It's a great meeting. We expect that one to sell out. It sells out every year, so if you want to attend, please register soon, bioequityeurope.com. Then our next event is our second Grand Rounds conference in the U.S. We'll be in Chicago right after ASCO. That's our early R&D conference focused on the interface of academia and industry and key bottlenecks of translation. We're going to have a great discussion. It's BioCentury-BayHelix.com. We also have a second edition of Grand Rounds that we're going to launch in the UK in Cambridge, working with AstraZeneca, CIC, and some others in the ecosystem there. That'll be September 17th to 19th in Cambridge. Again, BioCentury-BayHelix.com. And then our final conference of the year will be our 12th China Healthcare Summit back in Shanghai, October 27 to 29. We do that event with BayHelix and McKinsey as well.
And I think what people really need to remember also is to start sock shopping now.
Yeah. Bring your socks, yeah.
Or shoe shopping. As I said, it's a big shoe game up here on stage, and I know my wife would be disappointed if I didn't give props to all the women wearing great shoes today. So kudos to you.
Don't forget my socks, Joe.
You know, I got a lot of work to do. What can I say, Josh? Alrighty, well, thank you to all in our audience here for hanging around. We're about to go enjoy a farewell drink and a little bit of networking. And for those of you listening at the gym or on your walk to work or on your drive to work, we appreciate you tuning in. Like us, subscribe us, send us a question, and don't forget to check out our sister podcast, The BioCentury Show.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Kendall Square Orchestra provides the music for BioCentury This Week. The group connects science and technology professionals and other members of the greater Boston community to collaborate, innovate, and inspire through music while supporting causes related to healthcare and education.